And what I mean by the satirist critic playing a pure role in art is that the satirist critic is located in the lower left quadrant of the lower left institution. The satirist critic is the person who is most suited to that realm, but that the realm of the clown, which is now the institution of art, can't survive without an institution of its own, without incorporating all of the opposing forces within its own structure. So naturally, the satirist critic, you have to have the celebrant doing that work, you have to have the artisan creating the products to be sold, you have to have the publicist doing the the work of promoting these to advertise. So but the satirist critic is sort of in, it's like that's the pure purpose of the institution of art to begin with, in the same way that the theologian, being in the upper left quadrant of the upper left institution, is the most pure in that realm. The king is the most pure role in the state, and the foot soldier is the most pure role in the military. I want to go ahead and read a little from Thompson here, and in this next paragraph and a half that I'm going to read, he sort of explains he gives you the implications of this, and begins to make you see how this social dynamic in which we always move from the lower right quadrant and build new people or institutions that make society run, how this plays a role in even in things like Greek philosophy and Hebrew philosophy going back thousands of years. So let me read this from Thompson. As an institution grows in complexity, it becomes impossible to have all the members of one mind. A religion of mystics would collapse as a social institution, and therefore what Max Weber calls the routinization of charisma allows the institution to employ its opposites within its own structure. This fall from unanimity to multiplicity is another expression of the philosophy implicit in the myth of original sin. For just as the conflict of opposites is inevitable, so is it inevitable that every institution must subvert the values for which it was originally founded. That's a very poignant insight there. It basically shows that each of these institutions has to, in effect, run like its own little, tribal system, and you get all these, conflicting opposites happening just within the realms themselves, let alone the opposing forces that happen between state and art, or religion and military. You have, all these sub conflicts between, say, high priest and celebrant, or between warrior hero and mystic or something. All these different complex sorts of conflicts are going on. Let me continue to read here. Quoting Thompson directly, every vision must be routinized to survive the death of the visionary, but every routinization of vision is only a bureaucratically disguised form of death. And so death is unavoidable. In the moral vision of the Hebrews, the condition is seen in terms of sin. In the cosmological vision of the Greeks, this condition is seen in terms of entropy, for all things must make reparation to the unlimited chaos from which they come, and to which they must of necessity return. So, this completes the entire cycle now, from lower right quadrant all the way to lower left quadrant of agricultural society. We're now entering the period of time where we're coming into the late 18th century industrial revolution in England. And before we do that, I just want to point out in the next 3 slides on here of how the state gets it, how the king basically got his advisors. And remember, a few slides back I said that the way in which the state is formed in its four quadrants is a little tricky, because what the state actually does is it doesn't draw these people from the state itself. It draws these advisors, the high priest, publicist, and general, from the other three realms in order not only to get advice from those realms, but for the king then to send his orders back. This is the way that the state gets its control. It sort of reflects back the king's opinion to the high priest, publicist, and general. So it works sort of like this. You can see the king got the general from the military, and using these color-coded color coding and arrows, I'll show you how this works. The publicist borrowed from the realm of art, and finally the high priest is borrowed from the realm of religion. And you'll also notice that the people who the king borrowed from the other three institutions is not just any person, it's the person in the executive position. It's the person in the upper right quadrant of each of the other three institutions that the state gets its, that the state forms its own sort of, hunter, clown, shaman, and so on, its own germplasm. Okay, now we're going to move into, like I said, we're moving from agricultural society, which I now shrink down to make room for more ridiculous Mickey Mouse ears, but other institutions, or what in this case is going to be corporate systems. So the first thing to happen here is the Industrial Revolution. Okay, and we have a new institution, or what we would recognize later as a corporate system, not just an institution of people. A corporate system's a lot more complex. It has a lot to do with maritime trade, the new maritime trade that's beginning to happen around the world, and mostly dominated by England. So we have a new outgrowth, again, our first outgrowth in the lower right quadrant where the masses are. Foot soldiers are mainly turned into industrial fodder. These are the people that are going into the factories to create things, and it creates this new corporate system called industry. And as we can see, we've changed to phase 3, industrial civilization, from institutions to corporate systems. So we're now in the third branch out from the germplasm of the tribe. We're on the third circle, overlapping circle going outward. All right, in reaction to the creation of industry, the state again has to get its act together, find some other way to do things besides having an arrogant king in charge. And so what we get from the state is the creation of government. So in Britain, this would be the creation of Parliament, and in the newly formed United States, this would be the Congress, and the President, and all this other business. So we get the creation of government. This is a much more elaborately formed system, and it's a corporate system, and it involves a lot more. We're going to get into how it divides up in its 4 quadrants later. Religion goes to the old institution of religion, now powerless in the face of this new industry and government, gets its new outgrowth, and this is the realm of education, or a corporate system of education. Of course, the idea of education has always, there's always been education, but not in the kind of corporate system that begins to emerge now in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. So we get education, and then finally in the clown's realm, the lower left quadrant, the realm of art begins to lose its meaning within this new realm of corporate systems. So we get the institution of media. Now, media is a lot more, media is a system of taking, it does the same thing art does, but it does it it's a much more secularized and informational medium. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go into how these four realms break out and form their own, four-way germplasm, just like everything that came before. In industry, you have the worker, of course. You have the executive CEO, the inventor. Okay, this is the idea person, the person who would normally occupy where the shaman and theologian are. This is the shaman or theologian of industry. And finally, the entrepreneur goes down to actually where the clown, satirist, critic, and media are in the lower left quadrant. Now, that's what the entrepreneur is basically trying to do, is that, the entrepreneur has to make the final link and get this product to be popular to people in some way. And that's not the job of the inventor. That is the job of the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur makes the final link, gets the product to be sold. Entrepreneurs have to do all this in-between work between the people who want to sell and the prospective people who want to buy. Government breaks out into these four quadrants. Now, I've simplified, of course, what goes in the upper right quadrant. That could be prime minister, president, and it would normally include all the institutions of government, such as the Congress and the Senate, and if you're, in your, the Parliament, whatever kind of system you have. But your executive branch is up there, as well as the other branches of government. And I just make it simple. I put president. Your civil servants these are all your government workers. These are the people who are doing the routine operational, boring routine operational work to make this happen. Political advisor that's your Henry Kissinger or whatever. That's the person advising the president on matters of international intrigue and so on. And your propagandist. Now, this is a similar layout to what you saw in the state, except that what the government does is the government doesn't necessarily borrow from the executive branches of the other three realms. Instead, they take more from the idea people. So the political advisor that the president is using isn't necessarily someone in the upper right quadrant of education. We're going to get into that a little later. We're going to see how more complex this system is and why it worked in response to the Industrial Revolution. Education breaks out into these four realms. You have, of course, the student. That's the customer of this realm. You have the dean, or that would be also include all administrative personnel in education. The scientist scholar being the idea person, the person bringing a sense of purpose to all of this. And of course you have the teacher in the lower left quadrant. The teacher is, serving the purpose of, teaching students. The teacher is there in a idea realm, but not what we call an idea purpose realm. This is more, the teacher is basically the person filling the function of clown, satirist, critic, and later we'll break media out. But the teacher, it seems like, well, isn't that functional? Shouldn't that belong in upper right quadrant? No, it doesn't. The